Okay, welcome. This is the first video of the 3 videos to the op art unit that we're going to be doing. The first video of the 3 is doing this illusion here. Now remember, op art relies on a couple different things. 1, line movement and direction, 2, contrast, and 3, shape. Okay, so the first thing what we're going to do is just take a look at this piece. So this is what yours is going to end up looking like, somewhat, if you do it following these directions. You'll notice that there's a constant, which is a grid in the background, and that is measured, which means it's very uniform and structured, and then wherever those lines come in contact with a certain shape, in this case a circle, they start to augment and move in different directions, therefore creating these unique shapes that kind of make these 2 circles become spheres and therefore look like they're kind of floating. And then of course when we add our drop shadow here, it's going to make that effect even more apparent. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to take a piece of paper. This is actually just a piece of printer paper that has been cut in half along the longest edge. So you've got an 8.5 by 11 piece of printer paper. You're going to take it and go at the halfway mark of the 11, so at the 5.5 mark. So that's going to give you a piece of paper that's 5.5 by 8.5. Right? If you don't have this from class or you're not at school, that's how you'll do it. You'll just take a piece of paper, fold it in half along the long edge, and then either tear it or cut it with a pair of scissors. Okay? So the first thing you got to do is create a circle. For this project, I'd like you to do at least 2 circles. If you want to do more than that, that's fine. If you don't have a compass at home, you can just use something like this, the lid off of a candle. They can be the same size, 2 different sizes. They don't have to be in line with one another. They can be anywhere on the paper. You just don't want them going off the edge like that. Okay? So I'm going to just trace my first one here, and I'll do another one kind of down here. Okay. So once you get your circles on, make sure you can actually trace a circle. Sorry about that. Once you get your circles on the paper, you're going to then start going and putting your grid on. And what you need to do is grab your ruler and line the 0 of your ruler up with the corner of the paper. Now, depending on what kind of ruler you have, the end of the ruler is 0, but that's not always the case. So make sure you look at the inches side and you find the 0, you put it at the corner of your paper, and then every half inch you're going to make a mark going down that edge. So the 0 is the corner, so then you're 1 or half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5. When you get to the other side of your paper, you should have that 5.5. Remember, I said the paper was 5.5 by 8.5. So the best practice is just go the opposite edge of the paper and do the same exact measurements on that opposite side. So I won't count this time. Right? And then you're going to go along the horizontals. Okay, so the long edge. So again, put your 0 at the corner. And again, when you end up with your last mark, it should be the edge of the paper at 8.5. Okay, let's do the same for the other edge, and then you'll be all set up. So this is a little tedious, but if you want the illusion to work out correctly, you need to understand that what makes it as strong as it is the fact that there's organization in the background, and then that organization is disrupted by the circle, and wherever those lines cross those circles is where they're going to change. Okay, so if you've got a background that's all wonky, your circles are going to be wonky, and then they're going to either blend into the background or it's going to be not as strong of an illusion. So now that you've got those, hopefully you can see that. Alright, you can see my circles anyway, but I've got a half-inch mark all the way around. Okay, you're going to take and line up the first 2 marks. Make sure that your ruler is nice and straight and it's lined up on both of those, and then you're going to carefully draw a line. Now, if you ever draw a line and it touches one of the circles, you're going to stop at that circle's edge and then continue the line on the other side of the circle. So you're going to continue this in the same fashion. for this whole entire edge. And if they're not, like I said, 100% straight, it's not going to be the end of the world, but it certainly will affect the outcome. Okay, so any lines that don't intersect circles, you can just make a nice straight, quick line. Okay, so that line just touched the edge of the circle. That's okay, but we don't want to go through the circle. Now yours are not going to be exactly the same as mine because, again, you have the ability to put the circles where you want, have different size circles, so yours may not end up with the same amount of verticals going through the circle. You'll have the same number of lines because I'm using the same size paper, but it may look a little different, okay? So once you have your verticals, you're going to change it, twist your paper around, and do the other way. Sometimes your line, like mine, might go through two circles at once. Just skip it. Okay. So when you get done this part, it should look a little bit like this here. Okay. So the next part is going to be freehand. Up till now you've used two devices to help you draw a circle, help you draw straight lines. The rest is going to be done by freehand. Okay. So the best thing to do here is just look at the middle of the circle and try and get a dot as close to the center of each circle as you can. This doesn't have to be perfect, but don't pay attention to any of the lines outside the circles, just worry about the center. What you're going to do is you're going to start drawing lines and connecting these lines, but you're not going to use any vertical lines. Okay? There are no straight lines inside the circles, so at least it needs to curve a little bit. There's no straight lines. So in order to do this, what I'm going to do is I'll find the center like I told you, and anything left of that dot is going to curve like this. Okay? Anything right of that dot is going to curve the other way. If it happens to go, or seemingly go, right through the center, you as the artist can choose whether you're going to curve it left or right. It doesn't matter, but you're going to do it very slightly. Okay? Again, no straight line, not even through the center. So what I'm going to do is, this one's just a little bit to the left, so I'm going to keep it going to the left, and I'm going to curve it very slightly, like that. Now I'm going to curve this one a lot more. What you want to try and do is one fluid motion, and you also want to curve it starting to go back the other way, right about the middle of the circle, so where that dot is. So don't start curving up here, it's going to look weird. So now you're going to do one more, and that's that end. Okay? So you switch over to the other side, now we're going the opposite direction. Now you can see here I have like the tiniest slice, right? Even if I just draw it straight, it's pretty tiny. You still want to put a curved line there, okay? Make it happen. I don't care how you do it, but you don't want to mess that up. So the other option would be erase the circle, slide it over just a little bit, then you've got less of a slice. But you can see I still have a tiny, tiny slice there. So you're going to do the same thing on the other one. Okay, this one is just outside, so that's great. Okay, so now they kind of look like pumpkins. I'm going to turn them and do the same thing, go in the opposite direction. So this one I'm going to curve to the right now. So already, even without putting a checkerboard pattern on this, this looks more spherical than just a flat circle. And that's what we want, okay? This is what we call cross contour line. It's showing the form of a shape or a 3D thing, so it's really the showing form, not shape. Shape is a two-dimensional, form is three-dimensional. So a circle is a shape, a baseball or a sphere would be the form. So now that we have three-dimensionality, the pattern, so remember, line, so we have that. Direction, right? It's changing direction. It's going straight here, but then it's curving. Okay? And then now contrast. So placing two contrasting colors or values, so for this case black and white, along that edge is going to make it even more three-dimensional. Okay? So now what we need to do is just mark our paper so we don't mess it up when we start putting on Sharpie. Okay? I've had a lot of students get to this part and then they completely destroy it because they don't know how to do a checkerboard pattern, or at least when it comes to hitting the edge of the sphere. Remember, this is our end goal. Okay? So I'm going to keep that a little bit closer just so you can kind of make reference, but essentially what you're going to do is just take a pencil, don't use a Sharpie, don't use a pen, something erasable, and you're going to start with your checkerboard pattern. So this first row doesn't have any circles intersecting it, so it's just black, white. So the X is the only thing you got to make that indicates a black Sharpie, and then you don't do anything in the white space. So if that first row starts with black, the second row is going to start with white. So black, white. Here's where it gets tricky. I've got a little tiny wedge here, and then I've got another part of it that actually is intersected by the circle. So if this is white, we know that this little tiny piece right here is going to be black. So what I like to do is actually color it in with my pencil. And then anywhere that the circle crosses the square, it's going to be the opposite color of the square. So if the square is black, inside the circle is white. Okay? So this is a white square, but it's also a circle. So this is going to be black here as well. Okay, black, 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 black. Alright, so you're going to just carry on and mark things so that you don't mess it up. If for some reason you're off task and you make a mistake, the great part is here you can erase it. It's all pencil. Okay, so this is a white square, but this little slice here of circle is black. Okay, this is a white square. This little tiny triangle right here is black, and this is white, so we know that this box here inside the circle is going to be black. Alright, so you want to proceed in this fashion and get the whole thing filled in. So we know this is white, so this has got to be black. So this is all working out both vertically and horizontally as far as keeping the pattern. Okay, you can use context clues or just the boxes around it, right? If we know that this is an X, this is an X, this is an X, this right here has to be an X, okay? If you look and make the assimilation of this is diagonal, so we can assume that that, and that are all X's, okay? These are all white, so X, 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 X. Alright, if you find this easier, that's fine. Brains work differently. Just know it's the same thing. You're just not moving horizontally. You're moving diagonally. Okay, you could say, oh, well, it's every other one this way. It doesn't really matter. But when you can see that the areas around it that have X's have a certain pattern, it becomes a lot easier to fill in. Okay, so when it gets to the sphere is when it gets tricky. Okay, so it's black, white, black, white, black. So if this is white, this needs to be black. This is white inside the circle there. So if it's a small piece, I like to just color it with a pencil anyway. I'm going to go over it with Sharpie just because I want it to be the same black. But it's easier than to try and fit a tiny X inside of there. You might miss it. So that's just my 2 cents. You're going to fill it all in. When you do, it's going to look something like this, but then we're going to talk about adding the shadow here, okay? So go ahead and get that entire thing done. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, okay?